24 minutes and 10 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity of addressing this issue and of listening to my colleagues as they've talked about it. I haven't heard some of this exorbitant language since I left the campaign trail. And I left the campaign trail forcibly, but nonetheless, I have some memory of it, and I realize that in a period of campaign, people get carried away. A dagger at the heart of our democracy is a phrase that has been used. The destruction of government of the people is a phrase that has been used. If I can think of someone who uses this kind of language quite normally in the political discourse, the name of Michael Moore comes to mind. And the reason I raise Michael Moore is because we're talking about a movie here. That's the source of this entire decision. There are a group of people who decided they wanted to make a movie that was critical of a candidate for President of the United States. In this case, it was former Senator Hillary Clinton. They didn't like her, and they wanted to make a movie, and they did. In the same vein as Michael Moore, who didn't like George W. Bush, made a movie entitled Fahrenheit 9/11. Nobody got excited about Michael Moore's movie in terms of violating the Constitution or a dagger at the heart of our democracy or destroying the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, because we knew Michael Moore. We knew the kinds of things Michael Moore was famous for doing. And overstating a position is Michael Moore's stock in trade. So the folks at Citizens United decided they were going to follow the Michael Moore precedent and make a movie. I haven't seen either movie, so I don't know whether Citizens United movie about Hillary Clinton went as far over the top as Michael Moore's movie about George W. Bush, and I don't care. Because Michael Moore, regardless of what distortions may have been in his movie, had every right under the Constitution of the United States to make that movie, to make the political speech, and to do the very best he could to influence the election. And the movie was a financial success, and the movie was a critical success. And the movie did not win the election. The movie did not defeat George W. Bush. The American people had other things to do besides watch Michael Moore's movie. He exercised his First Amendment right to freedom of speech. He got the opportunity to say what he wanted to say, and he spent a lot of money doing it, and the movie was widely seen, and the democracy did not come to an end as a result of the making of the movie. Now, we are told that Citizens United made a movie, and somehow that's going to have a vastly different effect. I don't believe that Senator Clinton's loss to Barack Obama in the primaries had much to do with the movie that Citizens United made. They spent a lot of money, but I don't think it was an avalanche of spending by a corporation that destroyed American democracy because Hillary Clinton did not win the nomination. I think it had a great deal more to do with Barack Obama's ability to run a decent campaign rather than Hillary Clinton's suffering at the hands of Citizens United making this movie. Well, because Citizens United was not one individual in the form of Michael Moore, it was a group of individuals that got together and took the opportunity to create a corporate form of identity for the making of their movie that got them in trouble. An individual could do it, but a group of individuals who organized themselves into a corporation couldn't do it. And that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yes, they could. I don't find that to be a great destruction of the First Amendment. I find that to be the proper statement on the part of the Supreme Court to say, let's have vigorous political speech in this country, and if a group of people want to do that vigorous speech in the form of a corporation, let them go at it. Let them have at it. The Supreme Court was right, in my opinion. Now, I hear those people who attack the Citizens United thing to say, yes, the First Amendment protects the right of free speech, but it does so for individuals, and corporations are not individuals. Neither are unions. And yet the DISCLOSE Act treats unions differently than it treats corporations. The DISCLOSE Act goes after corporations and their right of free speech and does its very best to see to it that the restrictions they put on corporations do not apply to unions. The DISCLOSE Act listens to the outcry of some corporations, such as the National Rifle Association, and says, well, we won't make it apply to you. And thus demonstrates that it's responding to political pressure from people who say, we will punish you at the polls if you take away our right of free speech. So the act is written in such a way that some corporations get treated differently than other corporations. And of course, unions get treated differently than all corporations. Is this the way we want to deal with the First Amendment right of free speech, where everybody ought to have exactly the same rights? Oh, no, I'm told. This bill doesn't prohibit any free speech. All this does is disclose. That's why it's called the DISCLOSE Act. You Republicans are in favor of transparency. You want to disclose things. Why don't you support this DISCLOSE Act? Well, if it's a bill aimed at disclose, why does the word prohibit and the companion word prohibition appear all through the bill? I have a copy of the bill right here, and on page 4, Section 3 listed on page 4, it begins prohibiting independent expenditures and electioneering communications. On page 5, Section 3, prohibiting independent expenditures and so on. Section 6, prohibiting independent expenditures. And then on page 6 in Section 7, in these ways, prohibiting independent expenditures. You go to the first title of the bill, and it is titled Regulation of Certain Political Spending, Section 101, prohibiting independent expenditures and electioneering communications. This is not a DISCLOSE Act. This is an act aimed at prohibiting expenditures by certain people and certain groups. Who are they? Well, government contractors. I've been in business. I've solicited government business. If I got the government business, am I told in advance, if you get this business, you are giving up your First Amendment rights when it comes to political speech? If you can stay away from contracting with the government, you can hang on to your First Amendment rights. But as soon as you become a government contractor, your rights are gone. It prohibits free speech from those who received TARP money. Now, there's an interesting precedent to set. I know some of the folks who received TARP money who didn't want it. They were told in that circumstance, you will accept TARP money. And the TARP money, as it was distributed in that program, forced upon certain corporations. Were they told at the time, or should they be told under the DISCLOSE Act? Let's have full disclosure and transparency here. When you accept this money, you cannot exercise your freedom of speech rights as a result of accepting this money. General Motors received TARP money. So General Motors says, you cannot run an ad expressing your opinion on any matter of public affairs. However, the United Auto Workers can. The United Auto Workers received the benefit of TARP money. The United Auto Workers received stock in General Motors. They are the shareholders of General Motors to a large extent. So, do we say, well, the unions under the DISCLOSE Act, they can express their First Amendment rights all they want, but General Motors as a corporation cannot, even though the TARP money was what allowed the unions to keep their union members to keep their jobs. Now, it's been pointed out here that the groups that are opposed to this are wide and diverse, from the Sierra Club to the ACLU. I turned to the letter that the ACLU wrote with respect to this, and they are not dealing with hyperbole, they are dealing with experience and reality. Let me go to the first key issue that the ACLU talks about and give you an example from real life. They say, and I quote, "The DISCLOSE Act fails to preserve the anonymity of small donors, thereby especially chilling the expression rights of those who support controversial causes." And then the first sentence in that, that section of their letter says, "By compelling politically active organizations to disclose the names of donors giving as little as $600, S3628 both violates individual privacy and chills free speech on important issues." Close quote. I take you back to one of the most controversial issues we've seen in this country for a long time, which was Proposition 8 in California in the last election. I'm acquainted with an individual who made a contribution in favor of those who were trying to support Proposition 8. That's all she did. She wrote out a check. Someone came to her and said, "We're in favor of Proposition. We're trying to raise some money. Will you help us?" She wrote out a check. It was less than $1,000. She went about her business. Her business was a restaurant in Hollywood, a restaurant that was routinely and significantly supported by people in the entertainment industry, actors, directors, others connected with making movies. When the contribution lists for Proposition were made public, and it became known that this woman had made a contribution in favor of Proposition 8, patronage at her restaurant dropped off more than half. People who were opposed to Proposition 8 started using hate speech towards this woman. "You are a bigot. We cannot patronize your restaurant." She had no idea when she wrote that check in support of those who wanted her a position that she agreed to, put on the ballot and voted for by Californians, and it was by a majority of Californians supported. When she took a position that was a majority position from the citizens and voters of her state, she had no idea she was going to see her business ravaged by those discovering her name on that list who would go after her. Now, they have a right not to eat at a restaurant. I understand that. But this is a real-life example of what can happen to people in controversial situations that the ACLU is appropriately concerned about. And the DISCLOSE Act, in the name of transparency, would expose small donors to that kind of retaliation. However, if you belong to a union and you pay union dues, and the union dues are spent to produce a movie, something along the lines of Michael Moore and Fahrenheit 9/11, no one will ever know it. No one will ever know that your union dues were spent in that purpose, because unions are treated differently than corporations. Well, Mr. President, this is a bad bill. It hasn't been through the committee. I'm the ranking member of the Rules Committee, to whom the bill normally would be referred. The majority leader, exercising his authority, saw to it that the bill did not get referred to committee. There have been no hearings. There's no opportunity for anyone to come forward and say, this will be a problem. We haven't heard from the ACLU and a witness that we could question. We've only got the letter from them because they were shut out from any hearing. For those that are offended by my reference to the ACLU and would prefer the National Right to Life organization, well, we have their letter too, but we didn't have an opportunity to hear any of their witnesses. For the legal authorities who believe the Supreme Court ruled correctly, who might have come before the committee and given us the benefit of their analysis, we haven't had a chance to hear from them either. The bill has been drafted and redrafted a number of times behind closed doors. But we only see the final draft when it hits here on the floor with no hearings, no background, no opportunity to question and comment and amend and improve. I'm in favor of transparency as much as the next senator. I'm in favor of free speech as much as anyone. I've stood on this floor and quoted James Madison with respect to free speech on a number of issues and been dismissed on the grounds that, well, anybody can quote James Madison. I believe in the 10th Federalist, James Madison made it very clear that the right of factions to express themselves freely and openly, even when they clash bitterly, is a very fundamental right in the Constitution itself. Faction, as they used the word in Madison's day, referred to political parties. I think the term faction also refers to those that we speak of as special interest groups today. James Madison made it very, very clear that if we attempt to stifle the ability of a faction to express itself, we strike at the core of liberty itself. Now, I hope people don't interpret that as over-the-top language, as I have interpreted some of the other things that I've heard as over-the-top language. I sincerely believe it, and I strongly support it. The DISCLOSE Act would not pass the test of truth in advertising. It does not disclose, the title does not disclose what it really does here. It's filled with prohibitions. It's filled with violations of the First Amendment. It's filled with special favors for certain groups and attacks on others. And for that reason, I will oppose cloture. And if cloture is invoked, I will oppose the bill.
5 minutes to the senator from New Jersey.